Welcome to View from the Commentary Box, which comes to you from Scottish Gas Murrayfield at the stairwell. We would do it from the actual stadium itself, but it is so loud out there that we can't hear ourselves think. So instead, we've come to the top of the stairwell, which at the moment is pretty quiet, and Stuart McFarlane joining me. Stuart was commentating for BBC Radio Scotland on that one, and I guess that was the gift that kept giving.
Yeah, as you say, we've stepped away from the discotheque to then think about a match that will certainly live long in the memory, particularly if you have any association with Duan van der Merwe. But it was, it had just about everything in the contest. And one thing that was a little different compared to the two previous matches in this year's Six Nations, the outcome wasn't going to be decided by the very last play of the game. And you look at Scotland going into the last few minutes holding a 9-point advantage. They had a little bit of a cushion, and I think that was something that Gregor was certainly hoping for. And it showed that they had the capacity to work their way back into a game that didn't start very well for them, but hold on to ensure the victory. You
mentioned about the bad start, and it really was. In 5 minutes, in goes George Furbank for a try. It was a very leaky Scottish defence, a bit worrying, a bit concerning, converted as well by the fly half, George Ford, who then added a penalty. So Scotland found themselves 10-0 down early on before they really, fired a shot.
They did, and it was almost as if Scotland in the first 15 or 20 minutes struggled to deal with the blitz defence. And England had talked all week about a blitz defence. They talked more or less all Six Nations Championship about blitz defence and how they were approaching it. So there was nothing new there, but it did take Scotland longer, I suppose, than a lot of people were maybe expecting for them to deal with that. And as you say, it was a well-worked England try, simplicity, in every sense, I guess. Good running from Henry Slade, offloading to Furbank, first international try for him. A lot was made of his selection, and he proved a point in the opening 5 minutes of the game. And then, as you see, George Ford, who has amassed well over 300 international points from the boot mainly, although there's a few tries in there, was very assured, and England, without playing too well, were 10-0 up in no time.
And Murrayfield certainly fell a bit silent from the Scottish home fans, who were in a bit of a shock seeing 10-0 down. But then Tuipulotu found a gap and was brought down heavily, but still managed a fantastic offload to van der Merwe, who finished it off beautifully.
Absolutely, and one thing as well is I think there was an element of relief that Xander Fagerson came back on after an HIA, and it was shortly after that Scotland started to get a little bit more attacking ball. You mentioned the midfield, Tuipulotu, a lovely run, something we see him do quite a bit with Glasgow, the offload to Hugh Jones. And van der Merwe, a lot of strength, because I think it was Ben Earl that was wrapped all around him, practically on the try line. And had that been another winger, he might have been able to force him into touch. But van der Merwe's sheer physique and size, and the angle that he cut in on, I think was important as well. And he knows his way to the try line, and that was try 24.
And then there was try 25, because straight down the touchline, I was a bit worried at the end because he actually hit the flag.
Yes, he was. If anybody was hugging the touchline and scoring a wonderful try, then it was van der Merwe on that occasion. I think it came off Furbank's hand, and then his forehead was knocked forward. You could see Russell's intent in setting up the move originally, but a nice little offload, and van der Merwe can do the rest. And he really does. When you watch it from behind the flag that he was coming towards, he does run like a 100-metre sprinter. He's incredibly powerful in a situation like that, and he left English defence in his wake.
And what an entertaining first half, because Russell added a penalty, and then we had one of those rare things these days, a drop goal from George again, making it 17-13, and we thought, well, surely that's all the entertainment over for the day, but not a bit of it. Van der Merwe once again, and again some Finn Russell magic. Finn Russell had a fantastic game today. In fact, between the two of them, they got all the 30 points, but a pinpoint accurate kick from Russell, and just straight into the arms of van der Merwe, and there's your hat-trick. Yeah, and
I suppose a good thing, you're right to point out Russell's contribution, but it was a contribution that included, a very, very solid supporting cast in a lot of cases. And you mentioned Tuipulotu, Hugh Jones at times. Blair Kinghorn didn't do an awful lot wrong, but he was had a little bit quieter a second half. But the man that just brought a little bit of sort of electricity and X factor to the whole game was Van der Merwe today. And it's not the first time we've seen him produce this, but a hat-trick in a Calcutta Cup match. First Scot, I think, ever to score a hat-trick in the Calcutta Cup. I think only the second player ever to get 3 at Murrayfield in this fixture. You're going back 44 years to the last time it happened. So it is rare, not quite as rare at Twickenham, and it happened more recently. Jamie Joseph and players like that have been involved, but John Carlton and now doing Van der Merwe, I think the only players to score 3 tries here.
And 4 Calcutta Cups in a row.
Yes, and again, the consecutive number of wins, that's only happened twice before. So in this championship in the late 19th century, and then of course in the early 70s when we had the 2 international fixtures a week apart in March 1972. So for Scotland, that's a rarity to have only for the 3rd time in history 4 consecutive wins over England.
There's not much negativity to talk about Scotland on this one. I still have a problem with them not being able to go over with the rolling mauls, which so many teams find it really easy to do. And Scotland seem to struggle with that.
That, and they had an attack in the first half that I think accumulated 9 or 10 phases, and it may be unfair on the player, but I think it was Pierre Schoeman that gathered the ball and was effectively devoured by the England defence and couldn't release. I think what some supporters would like to see is Scotland in the opposition 22 scoring a try after a build-up including 13, 14 phases, but still be clinical. And you make a good point yourself in terms of that's something that a France, an Ireland, a South Africa can do more often than not. And it's having that sort of clinical edge, that physique, that bringing everything together and making it count. But Scotland tend to find ways to construct tries from maybe further out. And better defences, maybe the Irish defence are cute when it comes to that. So that then becomes a more of an issue a bit further down the line when we play the likes of Ireland. But if the Italy game goes according to plan, i.e. if there's a victory, then there's something really significant to play for in Dublin, because even if we have a disaster against the Italians, there's still the Triple Crown.
Yes, and of course we have won in Dublin before. Croke Park, in fact, it was a very famous conversion at the end for a certain gentleman.
Yes, it's that is the one, I think, at this moment in time that this group of players are looking at as a venue, as a fixture, is to find a way to beat Ireland, who have just the ability to find ways to beat Scotland regardless of how well or how badly they play. They can engineer wins, and that's one of the reasons they're held in such high regard, is when they go through the gears and when they're on song, they're irresistible. But they can have games where they're not necessarily on form, but they can still find ways to win.
No fear in this squad, is there at all? I mean, the fact that they've now beaten England so many times, and they've won in Twickenham and they've won in Paris as well. We always talk about the history, and it's always good to look back at history as well. But the here and now, Scotland are in a good place.
They're in a good place. They love playing England. I don't think, as you say, I don't think there's fear. I think what it is inconsistency, and we've seen it in this championship. They played very well for 44 minutes against Wales, and then they dropped off for 34 minutes, and then they found a decent 2 minutes to finish with. And again, they couldn't put a full 60 minutes together, never mind 80 against France. But when they were on top, they were functional, they were efficient, and today, again, there were maybe a few moments where there was sort of lapses in concentration, but today I think all round was the best performance of the 3 so far. And to get 30 points, for a Scottish team to get 30 points in a Six Nations Championship, it's still something of a rarity. It doesn't happen all that much, but we have firepower now in the last 10-15 years we didn't have, and we've got good foundations. England have got very good foundations, but their attack is still under construction, and it may be for some time.
Icing on the cake would have been a try bonus, but we can't have everything, can we?
No, I mean it's going to come down to these talking points between now and going to Rome. You know, if we'd landed a bonus point try in Wales, if Van der Merwe's, if the ball hadn't been held up, if we'd managed to get the decision against France, there's a lot of ifs. We'll look at this Scotland performance and think, yeah, there's a hat-trick there for Van der Merwe. He's a player with X factor. We've just got to ensure that, we can go to Italy, we can come away with the win, and we can go to Ireland, and there's still something tangible to play for. And as you say, have the confidence, have the belief, but have a level of concentration going into that game that we maybe haven't shown before away from home, not for a long time, because that will be needed. That physicality, discipline, it's having every knot tied securely. Because sometimes Gregor finds that he has, and then one unravels somewhat, and keeping players fit, of course, and he'll be hoping that there's no ill effects to collisions that involve Xander Fagerson, for instance.
Well, I haven't seen the stats yet, but certainly looking on, it seemed that there were a few handling errors for Scotland, but a lot more for England, and a lot of that was forced by Scotland being in the faces.
And that happened right at the very start. There was the real sort of impact of the first couple of minutes when Scotland were playing a very, very high defensive line. England were trying to reciprocate, and you thought, oh goodness, this has started at 110 miles an hour. And if anything, it was just that the construction of the England try from the scrum and being able to finish it off that changed the then next 15 minutes of the game, and that it was almost like a relatively confident boxer taking a pretty significant punch to the chin early on and taking a bit of time to sort of regroup and reorganise and then hit back, but ultimately had too much to ensure the victory.
So a couple of weeks off, and then it's all roads lead to Rome. And I've been to Rome twice. We lost twice. I'm definitely not going again, that's for sure. But I think, again, talking about this squad now, the history doesn't come into it. They're focused on a win in Italy and then set their sights for Ireland.
Yeah, I think if they can get just a straightforward victory, ideally with a bonus point, even if it's a relatively no-frills performance, go in, get the job done, come away, nothing untoward happens, a routine victory, but take nothing away from Italy. They themselves, if they have the bit between them teeth, they can be very dangerous opposition, and they can start games well. That Scotland just need to look at their performance against England to be reminded that they're not necessarily a side that are always going to collapse the way they did against New Zealand in the World Cup. That there's a bit more to them than that, so it can take nothing for granted. But I think the good thing about this Scotland side is they seem to have an understanding between have that balance between emotion and composure. It's just a case of being that little bit more clinical and consistent.
So we will be going, regardless of the Italy result, to Dublin for the Triple Crown. It's something that hasn't happened in a wee while now. But seriously, in Dublin, Ireland, one of the best teams in the world at the moment, it's going to be an uphill struggle. But again, Scotland will be back into their favourite role of being underdogs.
Yeah, and I think they handled England played several cards this week just past in the build-up to this fixture, and one of them was the underdogs card, and they identified Finn Russell and they identified recent history in this fixture, and Scotland and Gregor Townsend were able to deal with it. Now, Scotland may want to revisit the 3rd of March 1984 and watch how you can conjure up a victory in Dublin to win a Triple Crown, as they did famously with a penalty try in the mix as well. They won't care necessarily how the scores come about, but if they can be a fly in the ointment of a potential Ireland Grand Slam or Championship decider, then that'll certainly be quite something. They'll know that they have Italy first and foremost, but I think there'll be a lot of supporters that will be eyeing up that St Patrick's weekend and Scotland playing the role of party poopers. It's been a long time coming. It's going to be a mighty task for them. and it's going to require everything coming together in a perfect storm, but it's not impossible. Some may say improbable, but not impossible. I mean, you look at what happened today. Had Elliot Miller-Mills stayed on the park from the 7th, 8th minute, and Xander Fagerson had been taken off and not returned, that might have changed the complexity of the game. Although when he came on a second time, he grew into the contest. And, you know, Scotland are looking at the scrum. I think that the scrum today was certainly very good on the Dan Cole, Pierce Koeman side. I think if there was any problems, it was more the Genge Fagerson side, and the way Genge was binding at times. I think that led to more problems in the scrum. However, as I say, everything has to come right for Scotland if they're going to win in Dublin. If they're going to beat Ireland, even at Murrayfield, everything has to come right because they are that good.
Just looking back at the overall scenes at Murrayfield today, this was, for me, one of the greatest occasions to be there. The atmosphere was superb.
Oh, absolutely. You think back a year ago to Doon van der Merwe's try when he literally cut through the heart of the English defence from a central position. Well, this was the second try today was from out wide. But as you see, when you've got 5 tries that have such an impact, because England's second try, suddenly the scoreboard, England are within 10. The conversion comes back off the uprights, so they're denied a conversion. And that was significant as well, because it meant that the closing stages they were 9 behind rather than 7. And I think one thing, and you'll understand why I mention this important in today's occasion, and I'm sure you'll agree with my sentiments here. What was very nice at the end was the fact that James Robson, the Scotland doctor, 282 international appearances, it was clearly relayed to him that after the 2 co-captains left the West Stand with the trophy, they would make themselves, make their way right to him, hand him the trophy, and he was hoisted high, above the Scottish players in that sort of player chair, and he was able to lift the trophy and make his way around a portion of the stadium. I don't think he was ever going to give it back. He kept possession of that for a good long while, and why not? Because, first being a physio and then later being the doctor, to have amassed 282 internationals is quite exceptional, and it was a lovely way for him to finish and be recognised.
It certainly was, and of course in the stand was J.K. Rowling. I don't think she could have written this one, could she?
She would like to give it a fair old crack. I think there'd be a little bit more magic and mystique. She maybe should have written the last game against France, because she might have found a way of lifting off the ground the French defence and allowing a clear sighting for referee Nick Berry to get a clean sighting of the ball. But that might have been a better outcome. But it's we've spoken about this before, Stuart. International rugby now, and has been for a number of years, is an occasion. It's a spectacle, and it's an event. It's almost detached itself from other aspects and other levels of the sport, because there's so many people that come, that attend the events, that wouldn't necessarily go to other events maybe further down the pyramid. It's still showcase, it's still box office, and it's still on terrestrial TV, which helps as well. Long may that continue.
So that's it from this edition of View from a Commentary Box. I'm sure we'll certainly be talking rugby again very soon in this particular programme. But for now, thanks to Stuart McFarlane from BBC Radio Scotland. And, good luck to Scotland, of course, in the next couple of matches.